And now joining us to discuss Trump's Middle East tour and new business deals is Dan Feferman, a Middle East affairs expert. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to start by asking you about Trump's charm offensive in the Gulf states. Obviously, he's focused more on the economic ties and on strengthening U.S. Gulf relations. How does that strategy impact Israel?
Yeah, I think, we tend to look at things from a purely Israeli-centric perspective, but we need to remember that the U.S. is the global superpower, and that all of these things are, at the end of the day, connected. And so when you're somebody like Trump or the Trump administration or any U.S. administration, you should be looking at the broader picture, and that's investment, that's infrastructure, which in order to create win-win situations, and that's what Trump is all about, is creating these win-win pragmatic situations. You need to look at investment, you need to look at interconnectedness, and to achieve all that, you need regional stability. And so there's been a lot of criticism, there's been a lot of worry that this trip isn't Israel-focused. We have to remember, the United States is not, they're the superpower. They're the elephant and we're the mouse in this scenario. And I think overall it's important that the U.S. has a broader regional agenda. It's not always going to be focused about us. And if the U.S. is signing, a $600 billion infrastructure agreement and $140 billion defense deals, that means that the interconnectedness between the biggest superpower in the world, who happens to be our strongest ally, and the new rising superpower of the Middle East, who is a potential ally of ours, is growing. That bodes well for us. And it also means that the Chinese economic and strategic impact on Saudi Arabia lessens because the U.S. is doubling down.
Now, Trump has spoken at least twice now in Riyadh and then at the GCC summit today about the dangers of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the region. He even called on GCC states to enforce sanctions against the regime, specifically today. Now, interestingly, there was a report released recently by a hacktivist group, Prana Network, this week that detailed how Qatar has enabled the Islamic regime to evade some of these sanctions on their oil. This is, of course, happening while Trump is accepting a $400 million plane from Qatar, concerning many on the left and right. Is the Trump administration ignoring these ties between Qatar and terrorist activities, albeit in Iran or elsewhere?
I'll be honest, that's always something that baffled me. We're always been aware of Qatar's influence. Qatar essentially buys influence, and it likes to dance in all the weddings. Some people have asked me many times over the last few years, and especially since the current war, whether Qatar's a good guy or a bad guy. And I always say Qatar is the arsonist, the firefighter, and also the journalist reporting about the firefighter and the fire. And Qatar likes to buy influence. It's also coming out that a number of those in Washington are on the Qatar lobbyist payroll. It's never been clear to me why the U.S. doesn't use a lot more pressure. The U.S. has its major air base at Al Udeid in Qatar. Qatar essentially receives strategic defense protection. It's a major non-NATO ally of the United States. And so why doesn't the U.S. use its pressure and its presence there to get Qatar to stop backing terrorist groups, to stop backing Muslim Brotherhood groups across the Middle East, to stop using Al Jazeera, its massive media platform, to incite not just against moderates in the Middle East, but against the U.S. and kind of Western civilization itself. It's inciting against the West itself. It's never been clear to me why the U.S. doesn't use its might. It seems like it's all about the carrots and not enough sticks in this scenario.
Well, moving on to Syria, there are reports that Israel has asked the U.S. to reconsider lifting sanctions on Syria due to security concern. How much of a concern is the security issue when it comes to Syria, and do you think that the United States will reconsider?
I'm actually of the opinion that it's Israel that should reconsider here. I think we need to be cautious, and of course we have the border with Syria. We have the long and painful history of Syria. We have the history of a Syria that was essentially colonized by Iran and used it as a proxy base against Israel. And so we do need to exercise caution. Of course, al-Shara, or the former al-Julani, is a former Al-Qaeda and ISIS Islamist himself. And so we do need to exercise caution. At the same time, we have here a huge opportunity for a strategic reset with Syria. And I think here the United States, the Saudis, I can imagine the Emiratis are actually involved in this also, have an opportunity in almost one fell swoop in historical terms to buy Syria out of the grasp of Iran and the radical axis, and bring it into the Abraham Accords and the moderate access here. And I think we should be doing two things at once with Syria, and that is offering them massive, massive benefits for joining the Abraham Accords access, but as Trump said in his speech, demanding a lot from them on the security side. And Israel, I think, should be taking definitely a trust but verify approach on this issue.
All right, Dan, we've got less than a minute left, but I wanted to give you a final word about the fact many Israelis and Americans have expressed concern about the Trump administration kind of going around Israel, as you spoke a little bit about at the beginning. Should Israelis or Americans be concerned about this? Is the U.S.-Israel relationship in danger in any way?
I don't think it's in danger. I think we're jumping to conclusion on this. Again, we have to remember the U.S. is the superpower, and we are the small regional power. We are a regional superpower, but they are the global superpower. That said, there is a threat here. There is a danger here that we are being too short-sighted and not looking at potential regional super packages. We're not looking at exactly how the Trump administration is moving. Said otherwise, there could be a big train that's moving ahead, and we're too focused on ourselves in order to see the big picture. And I think we should be much more in line with the Trump administration. Yes, we have our own concerns, but I think we should be doing it in a coordination with them. And sometimes we might need to, they want us to wrap up the war. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but we need to be having a better discussion with them, with the Saudis, with other new regional partners, and looking at the big picture rather than the individual trees in the forest, as we often tend to do here in Israel.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dan Feferman.